Hi everybody, this is Marcus over at Factory 2, Flint, Michigan. I'm here to help you get something like what we have here, standard image, something you might find in the wild, and make it into a more high contrast image so that you can do screen printing with it, so that you can use a vector program and do an auto trace with it to make some vectors. So you can use a laser cutter, you could use the CNC shopbot if you want. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do with vectors and with a high contrast image like this here at our makerspace at Factory 2. So let's dive into how we can make this work in Photoshop. First step here, actually, just so you can see, that's what we're looking for. So we're looking for a nice high contrast image of what that is. So let's see how to get there. Number one is we want to play first with the adjustment layers here in levels. So take that, open it up, and you'll see something like this histogram. This histogram is going to show dark values here on the left, light values over on the right. You can also see this one's dark, this one's light, and this one's gray. So this is going to be your middle. To make high contrast, you want things to be closer together here. So this high peak is going to be something more like the bottoms of this chair, or all the dark grays here in his body. So if you pull that over, now all those become black. And that's what we're looking for. And this is going to be the same for this little peak. It's less severe, but it's going to be all of these duller colors here. So we don't have to push it all the way over, but we want to get pretty close so that a lot of that space is starting to look white. And a little bit over on the middle, you might be able to see over here, there's a little bit of grays happening in this section. So if we move that over, I should cover that. Then we're going to dial this in a little bit more. This is just the first step. So now, once we have that first levels adjustment, we want to get these colors out of the way. Hopefully, in the case that you're in, there'll be some bright colors that you can easily select and get rid of. So in this case, we're going to use color range under the selection and select this bright blue. So if you grab it with your pen or with your eyedropper, see where you're looking at, and you can also see here in the image, depending on how much fuzziness you have, we want to have max fuzziness because we want to grab everything that's blue. You can get a pretty good selection out of that. So from there, if you click this black and white, it changes your foreground and background colors to black and white. You want our foreground color to be white, and if you just press a Alt backspace, that'll fill in your foreground. And now that looks a lot better in terms of what we want our high contrast image to look like. So this might not work in exactly your situation, but I'm hopefully giving you some tools that you can use down the line. So now I'm also selecting a different color that didn't get pulled over exactly, making sure that color is white in the foreground and making that white. I'm just going to do this a couple times. Make sure we get as much gunk out of this as possible. Make that white. What is the deal with this guy right here? This is what we want. This blue. There we go. Make that white. And then one more time. Wow, look how much of that is around. Let's make that white. Okay, looking much better now. Now after that, once you get to a point where you can kind of isolate the colors that you want to take out, do that and then switch it to grayscale. If you don't have any colors in it, you can switch it to grayscale right away. But in my case, that's an easy way to kind of pull those things apart, make it a little bit easier on yourself. Now we can go to levels again after we made it grayscale And look at the histogram. It's very easily discernible whether it's dark or light. So just pull in those edges over to where everything is relatively smooth. And now you get a pretty high contrast image. If you look at the one that I have here, we're almost there. It's pretty close. Almost exact. So the only real thing to change on the next step is to just do some quick painting, right? If you grab your brush, have it nice and hard, you should be able to pull some of the just gunk that's built up around. Something along those lines. Just to clean up the edges. It's less important to do it out here as it is to do it in here, right? As you get close to the image of where the actual trace is going to happen, or where the actual print's going to be. So it's real easy to just do some stuff like that. The other tip that I'll give you, instead of doing stuff like this where you could do something like that and then start painting where you don't want, is if you do the same thing, a color range of black, but really bring that fuzziness down real low. What that's going to do is just select your black and leave out a lot of this junk. So if you select the inverse of that, it's up here in select. Now you've had the white selected and not the black. And you can very easily paint with your paintbrush a good amount of this gunk that's filling in the open spaces that you don't want. So you could do it as easy as a full-on foreground fill, but sometimes that's not the most advisable thing, because you might be losing some detail that you want to keep. But if you do it with your paintbrush, you can kind of keep a good eye on what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. And just a couple smaller spaces to just do some easy dialing. Like down here, and like this needs to get cleaned up for sure. There we go, something like that. And then to get exactly where we are here, just a couple paint brushes to get out the text. We're also not going to keep this guy. This is all halftones. That isn't going to trace very well. If you wanted to screen print this, you could print it out and it would work pretty well. But in our case, I'm just going to be pulling this out for the tutorial, and we're going to rebuild a little coin in the vectors that we make. So I'll just pull that out right now. And if you did pull this over in to do an auto trace of right now, you might have a little bit of problems with just how much extra space there is, how much extra stuff there is. Oh, we don't want to save the selection. We want to inverse the selection. Select inverse. There we go. And make that white. So this way you have nothing but the object you want to trace. There's no real big grays or real big chunks of stuff that would fill up your screen. And it helps with Illustrator being able to, or Inkscape or whatever vector program you're using, to be able to get your trace as smooth as possible. Because it's only focusing on what it needs to. So in the next video, we're going to take this object into some vector programs and show you how to illustrate that and trace it and get some great vector lines out of it. If you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments. We'll get back with you, and see us online at factory2.org. Thanks.